So, bias. You've got one, whether you like it or not. This class is going to be very participatory. Everyone will speak. Even if you don't want to, you will. And I know all of you are looking at me like, I know he's telling the truth because I've already tortured multiple students in this class. So, a definition of a bias: a particular tendency, trend, inclination, feeling, or opinion, especially one that is preconceived or unreasoned. Stereotypes can lead to a bias. A poor first impression can lead to a bias. Impressions of others that are like-minded. All Democrats or all Republicans. The general relations are a bias. Implicit, the big takeaway is it's unconscious. It's not saying, oh, I think this because of XYZ. It's, this is my automatic thought. Everybody remembers automatic thoughts? Okay, good. These learned associations for an implicit bias can be related to anything, and we'll get further down the rabbit hole in that. But as the bottom of the slide reads, when you assume, explicit. This one's conscious. This one doesn't actually ever, this one's a lot less destructive because you might have an automatic thought that leads to this, but in explicit, the attitudes and beliefs that we have about a person or group are on a conscious level. What does that mean? You know it. You already know it. Doesn't mean you're addressing it, which is what we really need to figure out. When towards the middle of the slide, the bias and their expression arise as a direct result of a perceived threat. That doesn't mean violence. It can be emotional or psychological. Are you biased? If you've got a bias, raise your hand. No bias? No, you did. You didn't. Do you have a bias? Okay. Is it a problem? If you let it be. Good point. Good point. It's not always a problem. It can be. Having a bias, I'm going to say this a number of times, it doesn't make you a bad person. Having a bias just means you've been exposed to certain either belief systems or certain personal experiences that have, basically your brain has gone shortcut and said, all of this is unsafe or all of this is perfectly safe. Make sense? So far, so good? So for those of you, this is where we start to get participation. Who wants to name a bias? Here's a list. You can plagiarize my list, or you can come up with one on your own. My bias, doesn't matter what color a human being is. Generally male, walking towards me, pants down around their ankles, sagging. I can see their boxers, they're, whatever color, or possibly they're sagging, they've got monochromatic clothing. Doesn't matter what color they are, I'm crossing the street. I don't need any of that. I know better. It could be white, black, brown. Doesn't matter. I'm going to cross the street. The clothing is what I'm biased against, not the person. And I want you to be that specific. So, who wants to kick us off? Go ahead.
I'll go for anything in the media. I'm very biased against the media.
Which media?
Terribly. I just think it's horrible.
Mainstream media?
Yes.
What about conservative media?
Like what?
Fox.
I think all of it is bad.
MSNBC.
Kill your television.
CNN. Kill the TV. Bias against TV. Drastic bias there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really felt the passion coming from you on that one. All right. Invisible row. Hit me. Go ahead.
I think all French bulldogs are a pain in the ass.
That's fair. That's fair. Next.
Sort of like along the same lines, people have like a bias against pit bulls. I don't.
So what's your bias?
That they're not like the vicious creatures that they're portrayed to be. That they're just as sweet as any like golden that you might meet.
So your preconceived notion is that all pit bulls are, at least have the capacity and the ability to be sweet, even though you know that's not actually based in reality. Okay, good. Next.
Training preference. When I first started training with Sherry and Laura, I had a bias against this positive training that, I saw certain aversive training techniques work faster, better, and last longer. And then my bias changed, and now I'm in the middle of changing my bias against aversive training. Well, not now, but I had when I first took the course with Sherry. So I had biased against training styles and preferences. But it's changing back again. Now I'm getting educated more into the other side.
Education will alter a bias.
I guess since we're in a veterans class, my bias is I think Q school is harder than Ranger school. And I have a bias on that because Special Forces Q school was harder to me than Ranger school.
Fair? Visible Rose? I waited till you were in the middle.
Hydro flasks are better than Yetis.
Okay, tell me why. Just out of curiosity.
Because they keep things cooler longer, that's why.
Okay.
Makes my water taste better.
Now there's something that's really not based in reality. One bottle makes my water taste better than the other. We'll talk about somatic symptoms some other time.
A bias that I've experienced is when I moved to DC, I still had a very thick Southern accent, and so people told me I was dumb because of that accent. So people think that a Southern accent, since it's a little bit slower, is inherently stupid.
Okay.
Kind of like how people read country music sometimes, that sort of.
So you experienced a bias from other people about your rate of speech and your accent. Your accent's gone now.
Very much so.
Okay. Up front.
That Christians are judgy.
Christians are judgy. That's a hell of a bias.
The thing that made me mad when I was a kid was everyone said you throw like a girl. Oh, girls can't do what men can.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do just as much as you can.
The battle of the sexes, the sex bias.
Yes.
Fair enough.
A couple of one bias against men at night when it's dark, going the other way.
You said at night when it's dark. Let me ask you something. Does your bias go away in the daytime when it's light out?
It decreases quite a lot.
Situational bias. Okay.
They want Coke is better than Pepsi.
And Coke is better than Pepsi? Despite the Pepsi I'm drinking, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just the only thing I have.
Okay, sexual orientation, I believe you should, my bias is you should respect everyone.
So should you tolerate intolerance?
Yeah, I mean,
You should tolerate intolerance?
or,
It's all right. You can let that keep you awake at night tonight. All the way in the back.
Probably something that everyone agrees with the Chihuahuas are the Chihuahuas are all brats.
They're all brats. Chihuahuas are all brats. That's your bias?
And that's one race.
Okay, Peanut Gallery. You're up.
The biggest bias that I have is ignorance in the face of knowledge. If you have somebody talking to you about a topic and they give you information, and there is, without a doubt, it's not something that can be like falsified, and you choose to ignore that and continue to believe your whatever, I just get so infuriated.
And I can't imagine where that level of thinking has been reinforced with time and time and time again. But what do we call it when we have somebody that's what?
Army.
No, if you have somebody that's ignorant and you work to educate them and they hear the education and they continue to maintain the same beliefs in the face of fact, what would you call that? Come on, give it to me. What do you call it? What do you call it?
I said stubborn.
Oh, well, it's a word that starts with an S. Somebody said it. Stupid.
What about classical conditioning?
What about classical conditioning?
Classical conditioning.
And right, but when it's reconditioned, the conditioning being education, correct? When it's reconditioned, should the conditioning by definition not change? When the conditions change and the reward comes from something else, should that conditioning change?
They have a bias.
Of course. I'm not saying it's easy to change the bias. I'm just saying if in the face of new information that negates the bias initially, should the bias not then change?
Depends if they're wrong or right.
Depends on if they're wrong and how they feel.
Yeah.
Isn't this an opinionated? Because right there, you hit.
Hey, opinions are like,
Assholes.
and everybody's got them and they all. Mike.
I would say it's extreme cognitive dissonance because they are choosing to ignore the evidence that has been presented to them that their belief is wrong, and choosing to continue to believe what they know is wrong simply to protect their ego.
I'm not a nice person. I call it stupidity. What about you two? You got anything for us?
Yeah.
What?
Mine is kind of easy. It's just something I grew up with. Hobbies and interests, people that play video games, I've known to be lazy. Even though I know that's not true. And people who sit on their phones are just as lazy as, anybody else.
Okay.
But it's just something that I've always...
Gamers are lazy. Interesting bias. TA.
Football fans and their teams.
The fanatic.
Depending on which teams they like.
Okay. So everybody already did this. Y'all named a bias. Anybody want to add anything to it?
How about you, Matt?
What? Pants sagging around the ankles doesn't count? I mean, I could name, here, I'll rattle off mine. Let's see. Age, no. Weight, yes. Sexual orientation, I don't give a damn. Race, don't give a damn. Religion, I definitely give a damn. But I fancy myself more spiritual than religious anyway. It's kind of hard when you you take a humanistic perspective to life and you've got religions that have some really intense biases of their own and teach it. Life choices, they're choices. A lifestyle, sometimes that's just style. Branch of service, of course. Of course. MOS, don't really care. Rank, get those officers out of here, man. I'll tell you what. What a pain. Political affiliation, I am an independent, pretty much down the middle. I hate extremists on both ends. And I hate equally. It's important. Disabilities, lack of, nope. Skin color, nope. Clothing style, pants around the ankles, Music preferences, screamy death metal, it doesn't bother me, I can't really get into it.
Yeah.
Family size, 21 and counting, all right, whatever works. I'm amazed you can afford that many kids. Gender preference, nope. Breed of dog, only one. Dogo Argentino. I can't get over it. I can't tell, the tails are cropped, the ears are cut. I can't tell what the dog's thinking. It's just too much power. It's just too much power. I've met them. They made me so nervous, I had to leave the park. My dogs were like, whatever. But I'm like, I can't do it. And I had to leave the park. Training preference, absolutely not. I've used them all, and I am pretty much okay with all of them being used. Are you a bad person for having a bias? No.
You're human.
Yes, you're human. And you're looking for shortcuts, just kind of like, Bonnie teaches the dogs are looking for shortcuts. That's why they respond faster as training goes on. How do I get the treat faster? Down faster. How do I do this faster? Faster. How do I do this? Boom, boom, boom. Bias doesn't make you a bad person. Bad people choose not to update. They choose not to update, mitigate, or ignore a bias in the face of new information. So let's assume we've got that guy with his pants around his ankles that walks over to my neighbor's house. And I like my neighbor, but he's got this guy who's sagging his pants. Looks like a monochromatic, Tommy Hilfiger ad. And I'm like, you riding dirty. But I walk up and at least an attempt to ignore the bias, and I meet him and I shake his hand, and he's a relatively okay guy. Now I still want him to put on a belt. That's never gonna change. But I didn't not interact with him because of my bias, because that one's already conscious. Again, people that don't update. I call this stupidity. And in my opinion, which is all I can give you, is generally incurable. Now, when you've come up to somebody that has stupidity as one of their diagnoses, that's good information to have. That's very good information to have. If somebody is willing to tell you point blank that they are stupid and are unwilling to listen to anybody else's perspective, you get to answer the question of, do you really want to spend more time engaging this human being? I recommend no, don't. Just walk away, you'll be happier for it. But some people like bashing their heads against brick walls. So as far as DHV goes, part of your job is to look at the client and meet them where they are in their life. And in military service, you will get people from all walks. You're going to get them in every size, in every shape, in every color. You're going to get them active duty. You're going to get them retired. You're going to get veterans. And they're going to come to you in all kinds of different conditions. And that's okay. The point of this class specifically is to be aware of the bias, understand it, and I'm going to give you a little practice at the end here to help you mitigate. So at the very end, learn who the client is, ask questions. You want to understand who they are so that you can do your job better. The ethical question: do you have the right to judge other people based on any part of their life, be it a choice or not? No?
No.
Any yeses? Go ahead.
You absolutely have the right to judge, but you don't necessarily have the right to interfere with their life. Like, you can think to yourself whatever you want to eat with that information matters.
Okay, good argument. Was there one over? Yeah.
It was kind of like you have the right to judge as long as you also know that you're probably being judged as well.
Hey, we're human. We're a little judgy, right? Anybody in here think I walked in the first day and judged all of you? No, I analyzed all of you. I didn't judge you. Mike.
I would say that any person who is actively, physically, emotionally, or mentally harming another individual deserves every amount of judgment you can provide to them and everything that you can do to them to prevent that from occurring.
Okay. I wasn't really talking about the jury box, but okay. Now, next question. Show of hands. Do you have to like every client you serve? If you say yes, raise your hand.
Yes.
If you say no, raise your hand. You are all wrong. You have to like every client. Every client. I'm not saying you got to drink with them. I'm not saying you have to be their BFF. Find a reason to like every client. It's important. And here's why. When your clients come to you, for those of you that are going to do service, emotional support, or generalized dog training, you are the expert. They already are holding you on a pedestal. If you can't find a reason to like them, and you're doing, let's say, the equivalent of a Bergen client training, you really have two options: ambivalence, meh, or actual dislike. Ambivalence in American culture defaults to dislike. Does that make sense? So I want everybody to imagine themselves sitting in client training, the class comes in, and they are ambivalent about you being there. They could leave it or take it. Think about that for a hot second. How many people off the bat can feel, oh, I don't think they like me? Yeah, you can, right? You can. Ambivalence, it defaults to dislike.
In American culture.
in American culture. There are cultures out there that is not the case, but in American culture, that is the case. Mike?
I would argue that there's another category there that you're missing, where it would be the professional respect and professional courtesy, where there are a ton of people that I interact with and I work with on a regular basis that I absolutely dislike, but I still provide them with the professional courtesy and the professional respect to show them the same level of interaction that I would somebody that I genuinely enjoy being in contact with.
And I'm going to tell you that the client is going to see through that. And the reason the client's going to see through that is because the more intimidated we feel by a certain individual, the further our senses go back to a more primitive brain. So executive functioning all up here. The further back you get, the more primitive the brain becomes into the reptile brain, which controls heart rate, breathing, and life support. The further back you go, the more primitive. Certain things start to shut down and other things start to light up, like, does this person like me? This is the equivalent of, is this person going to bite me? Is this person going to harm me? We can think emotionally, we can think psychologically, or we could think physically. The further back you go, it becomes more physical than anything else. The reason you have to like the person is so that they can bond with you. Now, I would say you could fake it till you make it, but the fact of the matter is we don't have enough time to teach you how to fake it. So my challenge for you then is find a reason to like everyone.
Is this an adapt and overcome?
Yes, adapt and overcome is a great way to look at it.
I disagree with, you don't have to like or dislike any of the clients you serve, because you're there providing a service for people because they're in a situation that you're passionate about helping. So you're giving every client that comes in, like Mike said, the same professional courtesy, but it's not just on paper professional courtesy. You're working there out of your passion, because even not just nonprofits, but even like ambulance drivers, paramedics, they don't like or dislike a person. They have to go there because their passion is to help someone live.
Right, in their case.
My passion would be to help someone who is homeless or who has no food and needs housing. So I go and help them. I go search for them in the homeless encampments. It doesn't matter if I like them or I don't like them, because it's not even an issue. The issue is my passion is giving them what I'm there to serve.
And that person,
different than liking them or not liking them.
it is. But the default for that person, because you are looking to provide them a benefit, is that you must like them. See, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the human relationship. The relationship you build with your clients, whether it be private practice or service dog client training. The relationship you have is what the foundation of the interaction is going to be based on. Now, if you are unconscious on the street, the paramedics don't specifically have to like you. They might be really pissed if you weigh 400 pounds and they got to put you in an ambulance. But it's that relationship is not based on whether or not they like you. But I'm going to tell you that the interaction you have with the individual, especially when that individual feels like they are coming to the expert for, in the case of service dogs, what is seen as life-saving treatment, they're going to be so far back in their brain that they are going to be able to physically and emotionally feel whether or not you like them. And I can tell you that this is true because I have seen it completely tank a placement. I've also seen it make a placement. So, and I know, I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I mean, it'd be nice if you did. And I'm not going to dislike you if you don't agree with me. However, the like is, you need to find it for the default. Who here likes water skiing? Me too. Who here likes mountain climbing? Me too. Who here likes shopping? Sort of. Me too. Who here likes long walks on the beach? Me too. Candlelight dinners? Me too. No. Kind of, but I'm going to get there. Who here likes dogs?
I like cats.
I never liked you anyway. Finding a reason to like someone can literally be as simple as liking something that they like. Romantic comedy movies? Yay! Slasher films. Y'all are on your own. But I mean, if as I ask those questions, you look around the room and you're like, oh, look at that person likes the same stuff I like. The commonality is where you can find the start to the bond. You had a, no? No?
I'll let it go.
Okay. So this is about answer and discussion. We're going to continue to go back to bias. How many of you in here know who Bo Bergdahl is? 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes, because you've heard this lecture before. You know who he is. All right. So I'm going to give you the short clip. Army E3, right?
Yeah, I think you
Okay, Army E3, low-ranking guy. Has some issues before he goes into basic training, gets out, he ends up going to Afghanistan, and he's very unhappy with his command. In order to attempt to show that the command is really messed up where he is, he leaves base in the middle of the night. He gets lost, and he ends up getting captured by the Taliban. Taliban. Can't say that word. Taliban, yeah. All right, anyway. Sorry about that. He ends up in captivity for 5 years. And he messed up in a big way. But after 5 years of real mistreatment, maltreatment, torture, blah, 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 he's probably real messed up in the head. He received, because of his actions, a dishonorable discharge from the military. Let's assume for a minute that you are all working some form of service dog program. Would you give a service dog to that individual? Okay, show me hands for yeses. Show me hands for no's. You red, halfway.
Like halfway.
So you.
I need to see, like, I can't just base on that. I need to see it.
Okay. For our no's, why no?
He served jail time, not that. He went able. He left his brother behind.
Right.
That's my bias.
That is your bias. That's right. Look at it. He's learning and stuff. Look at you. Where are my yeses? You give me red. Depends. Tell me what you want to know.
I just want to know if they can actually take care of a dog and give them the kind of 5 freedoms.
Yes. Let's assume that's a yes. No, it's okay. If you've got a depends.
Yeah.
If that's is that your depends? So with knowing that information, do you go to a yes? You would give him a service dog?
If he can, yeah.
Okay. Mike?
I would say no, simply because if he's willing to abandon people that need him, he's willing to abandon an animal that needs him too.
Fair enough. So now I'm gonna tangent just for a hot second. I recommend Serial, the podcast, to do that. Let's face it, right? His intent was to help them, as ill-conceived as walking off your post in a war zone is. His intent was to demonstrate the inabilities of his command. I mean, good initiative, bad judgment, right? Now, well, you know what? I'll wait on that. Would you give a dog to a convicted sex offender? Show me yeses. Show me no's. All right, the yeses are in the minority. Why yes?
I'm not a judge, and if I'm in the role of providing service dogs to people who want them or need them.
Where are my no's?
I absolutely would not
Okay.
give a dog to a convicted sex offender because service dogs can go to people who haven't hurt other people in those ways. These are people that have made that choice, and I've heard another person, and there's a million other people that could use a service dog that haven't done that, and that would be a much better placement.
Where are my other no's? No?
No, I have a thing to bounce off on that, because that's how I was originally feeling as well. But it also depends a little bit on what they were vendors for, because oftentimes it is like malicious rape or whatever. But in some country or in some counties in the United States, you can get a sex offender status for peeing the streets.
Good point.
So, what did they do?
Any other no's want to chime in? Mike.
I say no specifically because that dog can be used as a lure for children.
But you're making an assumption.
And what happens when you assume?
What happens when you assume it actually goes the right direction?
So, for the purposes of this presentation, our sex offender peed in public within 500 feet of an elementary school in the middle of the night after walking home from a bar. Would you give a dog to a veteran with 6 other dogs? Yeses, let me see your hands. No's, let me see your hands. Yeses, you're getting pwned. Yeses, give me your reason.
You don't know what their other dogs are trained to do.
Okay, where are my other yeses? Who are my, go ahead. Yeah, you.
Okay. You don't know their living situation either. Like, do they live on a big open farm or something where like all the dogs can run around and this dog will be used for him personally? Like, you know.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can like dogs maintain their jobs? Like if you have a herding dog, and then I don't know what other kind of jobs dogs do really, but if they're in the same area, can they maintain their own what they are trained to do without becoming homeostatic or whatever the word might be, like blending?
That's a valid question. For the purposes of this presentation, we can't know.
Yeah.
There was Zuki?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even though I am a yes, I would probably ask him if his other dogs were in any way available to do something like this, if we could teach them a task. But I wouldn't be opposed to giving them a service dog because they have 6 other dogs and they're probably happy if there's 6 of them.
Would you give a dog to an aversion-based dog trainer? Show me yeses. Show me no's.
Not a service dog, just a dog.
Huh?
Just a dog, not a service dog, just a dog.
Let's go with service dog. Would you give a service dog to an aversion-based dog trainer? Show me yeses again. Show me no's. All right, yeses, tell me why.
I would try and change their mind.
Try and change the mind? Any other yeses? You're going for depends again?
Yep.
Okay.
If it works for them, then who are you to judge how they use their knowledge?
No's, tell me. Mike?
I would say most service dogs are trained in a non-aversion training style, and you hand that dog to an aversion trainer, and that dog's not going to work long for them. The dog is going to shut down.
Okay. We've got 4 different scenarios up here. With mitigating information, is there a reason to say yes to all of these?
Yeah.
With mitigating information.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there also mitigating information to say no to all of these? So the takeaway for this specific slide is we need to look for reasons to say yes. And here's why. If we look for reasons to say yes and we can't find them, then our no is justified. But if we look for reasons to say no, we will always find them. Always. Does that make sense? The Sunday school answer is Jesus loves me. If you answered no to any of those questions, there's a bias there. Doesn't make you bad. Doesn't mean you're mean. But it begs the question, what is it? And can it be overcome? Now, some biases are very useful, obviously. Others are not, and they hold you back. For the case of this, ask yourself in any of those, what was it that raised all the red flags for you? Take a look at that. And when you take a look at that, we're going to get into a practice. How do you overcome a bias? Step 1, admit you have it. Don't worry, it's not a 12-step program here. Remember that just because you identify the bias, you're still not bad. You are still a wonderful human being. Everybody's got them. It's just a matter of, can you as an individual break through that level of thinking to have a greater understanding of what's going on for you? This is about insight at that point. Step 2, consider why you have the bias and what you can do to overcome it. And there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm going to recommend one. Step 3, colleagues, friends, family, I use the word team. Tell them that you're struggling with a bias. You don't have to say, I'm struggling with a bias, because people might look at you and go like, huh? Like, hey, I'm struggling with this person. It's generally an easier way to say it for the lay. Ask for help. Do you think this is true? Why is this client like this? I'm really unsure of the client. Let's take it real world for a second. A early 30s Army person who is, let's say, 100% disabled for chronic knee and back injuries that they sustained while in a war zone. And since that time, because they have spent so much time in the hospital and so much time in physical therapy, et cetera, on pain meds, they have gained 150 pounds. They are now severely overweight. And because of that, they appear lazy and lethargic and unuseful to the military. So they're being kicked out. And you are trying to place a high energy dog whose social styles match perfectly. And you're thinking to yourself, well, this shit ain't gonna work, huh? That's the thought that goes through your head, right? Can you find a reason to say yes? Sure. Can a dog be a magic pill? Is it possible that they're also not a magic pill? Okay. Step 4, relieve yourself of the bias and regularly ask yourself, if this situation were different, how would I react or treat the client? If that same client came in minus 150 pounds, but still had some mobility limitations, would it change how you felt about the client? If the client didn't have a beard, if she dressed really provocatively and it made you uncomfortable, if he dressed really provocatively and it made you uncomfortable, if there wasn't something about that client that reminded you of your mother. It's funny, I gave this training to the instructors, they all laughed at that too. So, take away all the assumptions when you're dealing with a client, and remember that people are doing the best they can. And if they have made it all the way to you, damn, aren't they working hard? I mean, the PPH waitlist is 2+ years at this point. If they've made it all the way to client training, I'll be damned if they are not trying the absolute best they can to improve themselves. It's not an easy process. Our application's 21 pages long. That is enough to make most people go, no, not worth it. But the people that you meet will definitely be worth your time, worth the energy, and they are doing the damn best they can. Step 5. After mitigating the bias, continue on with your job. Lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat, lather, rinse, repeat. Questions? It's not an easy topic. It's not an easy discussion to have. But what are we going to do about it? You can argue with me. I will not be biased against you.
I guess it's more of a question for the class, because I'm struggling with this after
situations
Mhm.
where you provide a service dog. If a rapist knocks on your doorstep and says, hey, I want a service dog because XYZ, and it's a legitimate disability, I wouldn't be able to work with that person. I recognize that I have a bias against that person, but I also don't want to do anything about it.
Okay, let's.
Is that wrong?
No,
Like-
it's not wrong. So there's a difference between understanding a bias and working through it and knowing your limitations. How many of you could do social therapy in a prison setting with a unit filled with kids that have killed dogs? If you think you could handle that, raise your hand. Yeah, I could too. Child molesters. Yeah, I could handle that too. Go ahead.
For me, it depends on context, because if we're talking about that situation where it's in the prison and this is right after this happened,
Mm-hmm.